Well, good evening, everyone. This is your host, Madman, and today we're going to do a bit of a different kind of video. I wasn't kidding about that reading idea I had, where I just go through the various actual, real snippets and fragments of classical literature that the developers decided to include in this game. So I've got some music going on. Hopefully it's not too loud. Hopefully it doesn't flag my video for copyright. We'll see. But in this video we are going to do a bit of reading. We're going to read some classical literature. And I'll do my best to vary up the voices so that, each book has its own unique kind of flavor to it. So I've organized things so I think every book we're going to read will be an actual book. It won't be the Chunks Employee Handbook or some other crap. It'll be the real shit, the good shit, or whatever pieces of it are available in this game. I was actually, I was kind of off-put that they still had books in the sort of timeline or the lore of this game. But despite their weight and antiquity as a format, I think there is a reason that they're here beyond the convenience of the developers adding them, because there's royalty-free and relatable reasons for them to be here. But I think that on a ship, if the power fails, or if some EM burst happens, or if you're on a planet where you're trying to conserve power, it does make sense to have a format of information absorption that doesn't require power. I don't know if I said this in a previous video, but it does make sense to actually have information, language, data, etc. stored on actually the widest variety of formats possible. Because anything can happen. If you're exploring the universe, if you're colonizing planets, you want information on as many different formats that have different strengths and weaknesses as you can. So, we'll start with A Christmas Carol. See what piece of it they've been able to justify including. A Christmas Carol. Stave 1, Marley's Ghost. Marley was dead to begin with. There's no doubt whatever about that. The register of his burial was signed by the clergyman, the clerk, the undertaker, and the chief mourner. Scrooge signed it. And Scrooge's name was Good, upon change for anything he chose to put his hand to. Old Morley was as dead as a doornail. Charles Dickens, 1840. We're not going to read the fucking parenthetical crap. We'll just read the actual content. Holy shit. Yeah, they didn't include much with this, damn. Also, I'm sure they reformatted this to be stupid. This is not supposed to be a poem. I'm pretty sure this is supposed to be just prose, but A Tale of Two Cities. Book the first, recalled to life. 1. The period. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom. It was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief. It was the epoch of incredulity. It was the season of light. It was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope. It was the winter of despair. We had everything before us. We had nothing before us. We were all going direct to heaven. We were all going direct the other way. In short, the period was so far like the present period that some of its noisiest authorities insisted on its being received for good or for evil, in the superlative degree of comparison only. Yes, very poignant. Right, Bleak House. Okay, they gave us a few paragraphs here. Bleak House, Chapter 1, in Chancery. London. Michaelmas term lately over, and the Lord Chancellor sitting in Lincoln's Inn Hall. Implacable November weather. As much mud in the streets as if the waters had but newly retired from the face of the earth. And it would not be wonderful to meet a megalosaurus, 40 feet long or so, waddling like an elephantine lizard up Holborn Hall. Smoke lowering down from chimney pots, making a soft black drizzle with flakes in soot. As big as full-grown snowflakes. Gone into mourning, one might imagine, for the death of the sun. Dogs, undistinguishable in mire. Horses scarcely better, splashed to their very blinkers. Foot passengers jostling one another's umbrellas in a general infection of ill temper, and losing their foothold at street corners where tens of thousands of other foot passengers have been slipping and sliding since the day broke. If this day ever broke. Adding new deposits to the crust upon crust of mud, sticking at those points tenaciously to the pavement, and accumulating at compound interest. Alright, Crimson Cabin, man. I don't know if this is a newly fucking, okay, this smells like a new thing. I'm not even gonna read that. It might be a classic novel, but I'm not familiar with it, so fuck it. David Copperfield, Chapter 1. I am born. Whether I shall turn out to be the hero of my own life, or whether that station will be held by anybody else, these pages must show. To begin my life with the beginning of my life, I record that I was born, as I have been informed and believe, on a Friday at 12 o'clock at night. It was remarked that the clock began to strike, and I began to cry simultaneously. I read that in an American accent, but, there's only so many British accents I can squeeze out of my brain, so it may not be accurate, but, If you don't like it, don't watch the video. All right, Dover Beach. This sounds like a classical novel title, but to be honest, I'm not familiar with it, so I'm not sure if it's a new novel. Sounds like it is, from the prose here. Ah, love, let us be true to one another. For this world which seems to lie before us like a land of dreams, so various, so beautiful, so new, hath really neither joy nor love, nor light, nor certitude, nor peace, nor help for pain. And we are here as on a darkling plain, swept with confused alarms of struggle and flight, where ignorant armies clash by night. Alright, Dracula, this one's a fucking classic. Chapter 1. Jonathan Harker's Journal, kept in shorthand. 3rd May. Blistritz. Left Munich at 8:35 p.m. on 1st May, arriving at Vienna early next morning. Should have arrived 6:46, but train was an hour late. Budapest seems a wonderful place, from the glimpse which I got of it from the train, and the little I could walk through the streets. I feared to go very far from the station, as we had arrived late and would start as near to the correct time as possible. The impression I had was that we were leaving the west and entering the east. The most western of splendid bridges over the Danube, which is here of noble width and depth, took us among the traditions of Turkish rule. Fascinating. Frankenstein. Letter 1 to Miss Saville, England, St. Petersburg, December 11, 17. You will rejoice to hear that no disaster has accompanied the commencement of an enterprise which you have regarded with such evil forebodings. I arrived here yesterday. My first task is to assure my dear sister of my welfare and increasing confidence in the success of my undertaking. Man, that's a short excerpt from a shitty part of the book. Man, they couldn't have picked a better part of that to excerpt? Jesus. Right, Great Expectations. Chapter 1. My father's family name being Pirip, and my Christian name Philip, my infant tongue could make of both names nothing longer or more explicit than Pip. So I called myself Pip, and came to be called Pip. Again, weird choice of an excerpt. I'm wondering if certain parts of the book are copyright free? That can't be it. Anyway, Hard Times. Book the First, Sewing, Chapter 1. The One Thing Needful.
Now what I want is facts. Teach these boys and girls nothing but facts. Facts alone are wanted in life. Plant nothing else, and root out everything else. They can only form the minds of reasoning animals upon facts. Nothing else will ever be of any service to them. This is the principle on which I bring up my own children. And this is the principle on which I bring up these children. Stick to facts, sir.
Interesting choice. All right, Moby Dick. Oh, man. That is a fucking criminally small excerpt from an amazing book. It's a tough read. The beginning of the book is a slog, especially. But it does the work of introducing the characters. If you've never read Moby Dick and you've hated old books in general, if I was to recommend that you put a ton of effort into reading something old, don't read anything else. Just read Moby Dick. If you pick one thing, just read that. If you can manage to get through Moby Dick, read Heart of Darkness. Heart of Darkness is one of my favorite books. Heart of Darkness is fucking terrifying. It is Lovecraftian, to use a Reddit term. It's a very good book. Again, you may not be familiar with the way the language flows, with the terms. My advice, just power through it. If you don't understand a word, you don't have to look it up. Just keep reading. Just keep going. You'll understand a lot of the terms that you're not familiar with just by progressing. Like if you keep reading, you'll understand unfamiliar terms just from the overall context of the story. You know? A Pendleton Bongle, or whatever the fuck the British term is, you'll get what that is if you just keep reading. If you try to pause and, you know, figure out what every unfamiliar term is, it's less organic. That's a general tip for reading unfamiliar texts, old stuff, boring stuff. It works. It's worked for me anyway.
Moby Dick. Call me Ishmael. Some years ago, never mind how long precisely, having little or no money in my purse, and nothing particular to interest me on shore, I thought I would sail about a little and see the watery part of the world.
Nicholas Nickleby. A lot of these Dickens books, I'm ashamed to say I've never read them. I should have at this point. They're everywhere. I mean, you can read them anywhere, but I haven't done that.
Nicholas Nickleby.
Chapter 1 introduces all the rest.
There once lived in a sequestered part of the country of Devonshire one Mr. Godfrey Nickleby, a worthy gentleman who, taking it into his head, rather late in life, that he must get married, and not being young enough or rich enough to aspire to the hand of a lady of fortune, had wedded an old flame out of mere attachment, who in her turn had taken him for the same reason. Thus the two people who could not afford to pay or play cards for money sometimes sit down to a quiet game of love. A quiet game of love, damn, that is brutal. Oliver Twist. Chapter 1 treats of his place where the Oliver Twist was born.
That was garbage.
Treats of the place where Oliver Twist was born and of the circumstances attending his birth. Among other public meetings in a certain town, which for many reasons it will be prudent to refrain from mentioning, and to which I will assign no fictitious name, there is one anciently common to most towns, great or small, to wit, a workhouse. And in this workhouse was born on a day and date which I need not trouble myself to repeat, inasmuch as it can be of no possible consequence to the reader, in this stage of the business, at all events, the item of mortality, whose name is prefixed to the head of this chapter. Man, that is convoluted as fuck. Dickens got paid to be published in magazines. He got paid by the word. So imagine like a programmer being paid by the line. Imagine how shit and bloated the program would be if the programmer was paid based on how many lines they had to write. That's what Dickens was dealing with. And he had to make a living, but he didn't want his stuff to be complete crap. So he had to write long-windedly, even for his time. You know, he was trying to strike a balance. Like, put yourself in that person's shoes, and it's like, okay, you can kind of understand why his stuff is long-winded,
I think certain books of his are probably better than others, but I'm not, again, I haven't read his stuff, so I can't make a informed judgment on that. You know, I'd be bullshitting if I tried to compare his books. What I do know is he was paid by the word, literally, which is crazy to think about. It's like, just generate a bunch of stuff. It's like he was treated like an AI. It's like, just make us stuff. Make us an amount of thing. Like, content amount, generate now. Like, that's how a human being was treated in the fucking late 19th century, a writer. It's not much different than how they're treated today, you know? Just write a bunch of sci-fi or fantasy fluff that can distract people. Just write as much as you can. That's why poetry's always appealed to me, because it's about quality, not quantity. And every force in the world just wants quantity. Quantity is all that fucking matters to people. And it will drive you nuts if you're in any way inclined toward refinement of any craft. It doesn't matter if you're a plumber or a rocket scientist. If you want things to be good, you're in the minority, my friend. Everybody wants more rather than more quality. All right, Count of Monte Cristo. On the 24th of February 1815, the lookout at Notre Dame de la Garde signaled the three-master, the Pharaon from Smyrna, Trieste, and Naples. As usual, a pilot put off immediately, and rounding the Chateau d'Ulf, got on board the vessel between Cape Morgiou and Rion Island. Immediately, and according to custom, the ramparts of Fort Saint-Jean were covered with spectators. It is always an event at Marseilles for a ship to come to port, especially when the ship, like the Pharaon, has been built, rigged, and laden at the old Fossey docks, and belongs to an owner of the city. All right, we're getting to the last 4 books here. Origin of Species. Here we go.
The Origin of Species, Chapter 1, Variation under Domestication. Included is a rather incomprehensible list of varieties of species. When we look to the individuals of the same variety or subvariety of our older cultivated plants and animals, one of the first points which strikes us is that they generally differ much more from each other than do the individuals of any one species or variety in a state of nature. When we reflect on the vast diversity of the plants and animals which have been cultivated, and which have varied during all ages under the most difficult climates and treatment, I think we are driven to conclude that this greater variability is simply due to our domestic productions, having been raised under conditions of life not so uniform as, and somewhat different from, those to which the parent species have been exposed under nature.
Yes, fascinating.
The Pickwick Papers.
Chapter 1. The Pickwickians. The first ray of light which illumines the gloom and converts into a dazzling brilliancy that obscurity in which the earlier history of the public career of the immortal Pickwick would appear to be involved, is derived from the perusal of the following entry in the Transactions of the Pickwick Club, which the editor of these papers feels the highest pleasure in laying before his readers, as a proof of the careful attention, indefatigable assiduity, and nice discrimination with which his search among the multifarious documents confided to him has been conducted.
The Prince, Machiavelli, man. All pages. You fucking cowards. Look this book up. That is sad that they didn't have the balls to include this. Machiavelli's The Prince. It's not just about, like, how to be American Psycho. That's not the point. The point is, people are going to fuck with you in the ways that this book describes. And this book, if you read it and you understand it, it is at best a defense mechanism against being fucked with. And there are times when you are going to be forced to use these types of pseudo-sociopathic or psychopathic strategies in your life. I mean, there are going to be times when not doing that is the worst option. Morally,
financially, personally, whatever. Reading this is a good idea if you are interested in not being fucked with and conned. Because this book, Machiavelli's The Prince, it is still valid in terms of its description of how people will try to fuck with you. That's fucking pathetic they didn't include that. Fuck the developers for that. Jesus. Oh, and of course they included a ton of text from this because it's... Anyway. See if I can do Orson Welles for this. God damn, he's... See if I can imitate him.
War of the Worlds. Book 1, The Coming of the Martians. The eve of the war. No one would have believed in the last years of the 19th century that this world was being watched keenly and closely by intelligences greater than man's, and yet as mortal as his own. That as man busied themselves about their various concerns, they were scrutinized and studied, perhaps almost as narrowly as a man with a microscope might scrutinize the transient creatures that swarm and multiply in a drop of water. With infinite complacency, men went to and fro over this globe about their little affairs, serene in their assurance of their empire over matter. It is possible that the infusoria under the microscope do the same. No one gave a thought to the older worlds of space as sources of human danger, or thought of them only to dismiss the idea of life upon them as impossible or improbable. It is curious to recall some of the mental habits of those departed days. At most, terrestrial men fancied there might be other men upon Mars, perhaps inferior to themselves and ready to welcome a missionary enterprise. Yet across the gulf of space, minds that are to our minds as ours are to those of the beasts that perish. Intellects vast and cool and unsympathetic regard this earth with envious eyes, and slowly and surely drew their plans against us. And early in the 20th century came the Great Disillusionment. The planet Mars, I scarcely need remind the reader, revolves around the sun at a mean distance of 140 million miles, and the light and heat it receives from the sun is barely half of that received by this world. It must be, if the nebular hypothesis is any truth, older than our world. And long before this earth ceased to be molten, life upon its surface must have begun its course. The fact that it is scarcely 1/7 of the volume of the earth must have accelerated its cooling to the temperature at which life could begin. It has air and water and all that is necessary for the support of animated existence. Well, ladies and gentlemen, those are the books I could find in this shit pile of a game. And sitting behind my giant trilobite, in front of it, rather, next to my Japanese, I don't know what the fuck that is, some kind of dwarf cherry blossom. Oh, he's looking at it right now. How convenient for the video. I'm going to end things. I have no idea if this was any good, or if it was a piece of crap video, but I wanted to make it anyway, so screw it. Here it is. It's thrown out into the ether. I send these words careening into the beautiful darkness, as a favorite poet of mine once said. So if you did enjoy this, I'm glad. If not, I'm sorry for wasting your time. Either way, hope you're doing well. And as always, thank you for watching. Go read Moby Dick. Peace out, guys.